What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Fish the Moment live stream. Today we're going to be looking at my best sonar recordings from the month of June. And I'm super excited to share some of these images with you guys. Got some really cool stuff to share. And so before we get into the sonar recordings, just want to give a few quick updates about the channel. And so if you're watching this video back after the live stream on YouTube, then you can skip ahead to the 5-minute mark, and that's when I'll start talking about sonar recordings. So just skip ahead a little bit, and once you see the sonar recordings pop up where the Fish Moment logo is there, you know I'm talking about the recordings. And so anyways, what's up, guys? Great to see everyone on the stream as always. We got Scott, Just Fishin', Stuart, Jack, Michael, Brett, Butch, Stu, Brett, all the guys in here. Ken, got Ray in here, Roger, PK. Good to see everyone in here as usual. Jim, how's it going? And so people are asking what happened to Johnny's face. I'm not really sure. I think I just got tan. I'm not really sure though. But let's see here. Butch saying the video lesson really helped me. Put it to use yesterday on small offshore structure. Managed to catch a few that was identified, at least until I found a few school of hybrids. So awesome. So doing a lot of video lessons, guys, with people through my website, fishmoment.com. I'm getting a lot of great feedback of people saying that they've taken what I've shown them in the lesson and then go onto the lake and actually catch a bunch of fish. And so it's really exciting to hear that I'm actually able to help some people put more fish in the boat. That's what I love to do. That's what I'm passionate about. And that's why I'm doing this full time right now. And so I am really excited to start or continue to do more lessons, to put out more videos. And so before we jump into all of the recording stuff like that, again, just a couple more updates. So the first thing is that starting, I think tomorrow, I'm actually going to have the first episode of the Fish the Moment podcast live on the Apple Podcast app. And so if you have an iTunes account or a iPhone, you can go on and find the Fish Moment podcast starting, I think, tomorrow. I'm waiting for it to get uploaded onto the app. And so once that's there, I'm going to upload the podcast onto YouTube as well as put some stuff on my website, which would be like extra links, extra resources to go with the topics that I'm talking about in the podcast. And I'm partnering with Travis Moran, who is the host of FLW Live, to do this podcast. And so it's really exciting to finally get that out, something I've been wanting to do for like 2 years now. So I'm really excited about that. But it'll be, I think, probably tomorrow morning or tomorrow night, somewhere around there. But I'll make sure I have that out on social media, stuff like that, to let you know where to find it, when to find it, things like that. So super excited about that. And it should be the ultimate podcast to listen to as you're going to the lake. And so really excited to do that. And so one thing I did want to talk about real quick, and it's kind of a plug for my some of my products and things like that. And obviously it's a Fish Moment live stream, so I feel like I have a little bit of leeway to promote some of my own stuff. So I want to share here really quick some of the cool things I just added to my website. Let me go real quick here. So transition right here. Here I got my website. So one thing I want to let you guys know is that I just added some new lake breakdowns to my website. I've been a little bit slow on adding these map breakdowns on the website, but basically I have map breakdowns where I look at lakes around the country, and I break down the lakes with Navionics maps, and I give detailed descriptions of the areas, things like that, and you get 4 areas per lake. And then I also give some graph images, some ideas on the best conditions to fish, also a list of all my favorite baits that I would use on that lake, with links plus video resources as well. And so it's all in one package for $75. It takes me like 2 to 3 hours per map to put them together, so I put a lot of effort into them. And I give you normally 50 to 60 spots, and I try to pick spots that are both some of the more obvious spots and also the more subtle spots. And so I just added 2 more lakes onto here: Falls Lake, North Carolina, and Lake Murray in South Carolina. Those are new today, and I'm going to try to be putting out 2 or 3 maps a week as I have time. And so this is where you can kind of go to get your map breakdowns of some lakes all around the country. And again, I'm going to be adding more and more as time goes on. But if I don't have your lake already up here, you can go to the personal map breakdowns, which are one-on-one video lessons, and you can book a one-on-one video lesson with me. I can go through your lake like this, basically, as I'm talking to you right now, and some guys already here have already done that, and so that has been great, and I really appreciate everyone who signed up for lessons so far. Helps me actually do this business full time and do what I love to do every single day, which is talk fishing and teach fishing. So super grateful and super appreciative to everyone who has supported me through this process as always, and feel very blessed to be able to do what I can do. So enough of all of these shameless plugs. So let me get this off the screen, and I'm going to transition back over here real quick. And then I'm going to pull up the Sonar recordings, and I'm going to start jumping right into it, because I know that I said I was going to be talking about this at the 5-minute mark, and now it's 6-minute mark, so I want to jump right into it and make sure I'm not wasting a bunch of time. And one thing I will say is that I'm going to be answering questions the best I can at the end of the stream, but per everyone's requests on the live streams before, I'm just going to talk straight for the 50 minutes I have here. And instead of trying to answer questions intermittently, I'm going to give like a 50-minute seminar / presentation, and then I'll have 10 minutes to answer questions at the end. So if you do want to have your questions answered, just type @FishTheMoment and then put a bunch of question marks at the end of your question, and I'll get to it at the end of the stream. And then if you want to watch the video back after it posts to YouTube, you can see me answer your questions. So anyways, that is that. So just trying to see if there's anything else going on here. I think that we're good to go though. So anyways, what I want to show you guys are some of my best recordings from my Sonar over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And so I have some really good images to share. I found some really big schools of fish. I found some subtle or smaller schools of fish I also want to share with you. So going to be really good examples here. So the first example is just a point that is a main lake point that comes up pretty shallow and then drops off into deeper water. And this is a point that I was catching a lot of fish on throughout the beginning of June on Table Rock Lake. And one thing that you'll notice about this point in particular is that it's very deep off the end here, and it drops pretty deep on this side as well. So on both sides of the screen, you can see that it's pretty deep. It actually drops straight into 100 feet of water. And what I found is that a lot of these fish, first thing in the morning on Table Rock, are actually pulling up on top of these points in 10 to 15 feet of water. And what's happening is that a lot of guys, when they go fish up in the morning on Table Rock, they go straight to the bank. They'll fish a topwater down the bank, things like that. Or they may find fish offshore in the middle of the day and find them in like 20, 30, 40 feet of water, and they try to fish those super deep fish. But these fish that are in that in-between depth range, that 10 to 15 feet of water, get really ignored. But the challenge of catching fish on a spot like this is that these fish roam a lot throughout the day when you're fishing offshore in the morning. And what's happening basically is, give me 1 second here, I'm going to pull up Navionics to kind of give you an idea of where I'm looking here. So pull up Navionics here really quick. So if you look at Navionics, we'll go up to Table Rock Lake. You'll see the point that I'm talking about where I'm actually catching these fish is actually right here. So this is this point. And I'm catching them really well off this point. The main river channel swings in right here. And basically the main river channel cuts in, and these are my favorite points to fish in the morning. If you're going to look for fish in the morning on these deep clear lakes like a Table Rock Lake, look for that main river channel where it drops like 60 to 100 feet of water, and then find these little flat points up on top. And these are really good places to catch fish. And what happens in the morning is that these fish are pulling up out of this creek channel onto this point in the morning. And so they're pulling up out of the creek onto this point, and they're just going to be chasing shad all over these points. And so what's happening is that as those fish are kind of roaming these points, they're following schools of bait fish that are up and pull up in the mornings. And normally in the mornings, those shad like to pull up onto these points because they can feed up on plankton. It's also a little bit cooler in the mornings, and so it's easier for them to move around, things like that. And so first thing in the morning and in low light conditions, whether that's cloud cover, first couple hours of the day, rainy days, stuff like that, the shad will push up onto these points and the bass will follow. But what happens is a lot of guys get really fixated when they fish a point like this on a very specific spot on the point. So for example, we take a spot like this nice long point that sticks out here. They may find that on one day they're fishing and they actually fish this little point, like that spot on the point right there, that specific little area. And they think, okay, all the fish on this point are going to live on this specific spot. Well, what happens is throughout the morning, these bass are chasing shad all over these points. And so while they may be here for the first 15 minutes of the day, after an hour, they may move deeper off the point. They may move shallower up the point. They may suspend over the drop out here. And so these fish are constantly repositioning around this point. So what I've been finding that's been really effective is actually, before I fish any points in the morning, I will graph the points first. And so I literally will graph over the point before I fish it. And people think, oh, I'm going to spook the fish, I'm going to mess them up. But in my experience, it doesn't mess the fish up at all, even if they're really high in the water column, to drive over the top of them. And then I can mark some fish on my graph. So I have a couple dots right here, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 dots right here. And then you got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 10 fish off this point, which is perfect. And so what I'll do is I'll actually go and I'll mark these fish here off the point, drop a waypoint, spin around, fish a bait down there. I was catching these fish on a hair jig and also a swim bait. And so I was fishing that swim bait and the hair jig through these fish, and I was catching them. But then I would come back, let's say an hour later, and I would regraph this point, and these fish would be gone. They can be completely gone, and I could not see any fish on my graph. And what happens is, so a lot of people take my advice sometimes where they say, okay, I found fish on a spot here, and I say sometimes you should fish the same spot 2, 3, or 4 times throughout the day. But what happens on spots like this is that these fish are not sitting in the exact same location, like that same 5, 10 yard stretch all day long. They may reposition and move 20 feet to the right, 20 feet to the left. They could move 20 yards to the left off this point. And so what's happening is that guys are finding fish right here. They catch a few fish in the morning because they see them on their graph. Then they pull back up and they don't regraph this area. They just pull up and they start fishing for 10, 15 minutes, don't get any bites, and they're like, well, the fish aren't there. What's happening is that those fish move and you never regraphed the area to see if those fish were there. And so I always make sure I regraph an area before I fish it, even if I caught fish there earlier in the day, because these fish can reposition and they can move from here up to here, or they can move here out to here off the drop. And so if we kind of keep going through here, you can see these fish that are here might push off and suspend over this channel for whatever reason, or they can be all kinds of places. And I'll show you a better example of that in a second. So hopefully that's all making sense so far. And so next thing I want to talk about is, I know I'm talking really quick, guys. I feel like I need to slow down, relax. It's a nice relaxing stream. But also realize that I run through these spots what seems like really quickly, but then I always run out of time to share all the stuff. So hopefully you guys like when I talk fast. I feel like I kind of talk at the speed that normally people, when they listen to podcasts, they'll go 1.5 speed. Well, my normal talking voice is 1.5 speed. So maybe people even like that. I'm doing you guys a service. They don't have a good 1.5 speed maybe on the live stream, so I'm just saving you guys time there. Anyways, so one thing that you can do that's really interesting with your electronics is actually identify the thermocline. And I know I just made a recent video, which is how deep to fish offshore, and I talked about the thermocline, and I showed you an image on my graph from when I found the thermocline and what it looks like. And so if you look at this image right here, you can actually identify the thermocline on the screen. And for those of you who hadn't watched that video, the thermocline is basically where the water with lots of oxygen and the water with very little oxygen mix. And so anything below the thermocline has low oxygen, everything above the thermocline has lots of oxygen. And so if we identify the thermocline here, we can actually see the thermocline is this thin band right here. And it's very, very hard to see on the screen right now. So what I'm actually going to do is, using my software, I can increase the sensitivity of this image. Basically, it brightens up the image. And the way you can do that when you're on the water is actually just increase the sensitivity on your graph. So bump up the sensitivity, go up from if you're at 10 out of 20, go to 15 out of 20 or 18 out of 20. And when you do that, we'll bump this up, you'll see that this line becomes very, very clear, and it's super obvious. And so you can see this right here that is the thermocline. And if you'll notice, see all these dots and just stuff all over the top of the thermocline? That's all the bait fish. And what happens with the thermocline is all of this water down here, where it's kind of like this hazier, kind of darker color, or brighter color, this is the low oxygen water, where there's very little oxygen. And the water up here is where you have good oxygen levels. And so the bass never want to get below this thermocline line right here. They all want to stay above it. And you can see it very clearly because you can see all the fish and the bait staying up above the thermocline. Nothing's really going down below the thermocline. And so when I'm looking for bass, I know that I only have to look as deep as the thermocline is here, which on this day was 26 feet of water. And so it eliminates a lot of the lake because I can basically now say, okay, let me look at this contour line map. I never need to fish deeper than 26 feet of water. And so if we look around this lake, that eliminates like a ton of water. It eliminates all this water out here. It eliminates a ton of this stuff, and really only have to focus on points and drops and things like that top out in 26 feet of water. I say that though, and there's actually an image I want to show you where that's not exactly always true. And so what I do find a lot of times when I'm looking at the thermocline is that this thermocline will be set up, look at it right here, this thermocline will be set up in, let's say, 26 feet of water, like in this image right here. And when this thermocline's in 26 feet of water, a lot of times these fish are not going to get on the bottom, like down here. This is like a 40 foot off a point. It's like 40 feet of water out here. But if you look, there's actually some isolated standing timber that's sticking up. And the top of that standing timber is in 26 feet of water. And you may hear about guys talking about, fishing the tops of standing timber. They do that a lot in the South Carolina lakes. If you're fishing like Lake Hartwell, Lake Lanier, if you're fishing like Washita in Arkansas, even some of the lakes down in Texas where you have like the mesquite trees, stuff like that. I don't know if they actually have a ton of that, but you know what I'm talking about. There's trees all over. And the people say, oh, I'm fishing the tops of standing timber. Well, what they're doing is they're looking basically for trees that are in, let's say, 40 or 50 feet of water that top out right at the thermocline in the summertime. And so if you look at this spot right here, you can actually see there's a ball of bait fish here. There's all kinds of dots on the screen. There's a bunch of fish actually on top of this standing timber that I caught. And there's a giant tree that's like 40 feet tall right here that again tops up in 30 feet of water. And that thermocline, if we kind of look at the image and kind of brighten it up again, you can see that thermocline is right there. It's very, very obvious when you brighten up that image. And there's these fish that are all up on top of that thermocline, suspended in the tops of those trees, and you can work like a drop shot or a swim bait or a hair jig through those fish. Boom, put them in the boat. And that's one really good way to catch them. And so I mentioned earlier that I'm actually eliminating all the water that's in like 40, 50, 60 feet because the thermocline's in 26 feet. But actually, I might still be fishing in 40 feet of water, like out here, way out here in the middle, but I'm fishing in the tops of trees, where the tops of the trees top out in 25, 26 feet of water, like the ones in this image right here. So hopefully that kind of makes sense on what I'm talking about right there. Let's see here. And then can you highlight those thermal areas in your depth finder? I'm not really sure when like highlight, you could just bump up the sensitivity, but yeah, you can put like on the Navionics if you want to put, you can highlight the contour line. So if you don't want to go deeper than 20 feet, 26 feet, on all Navionics chips, there's a setting in there where you can use a depth highlight, and you can highlight everything 16 feet and shallower, 26 feet and shallower. So that's a really good call out there that if you want to set those certain depth ranges and highlight them on your map, you can do it on your fish finder. You can't do it on the web app that I'm using here, the Navionics One web app, but normally you can. So another spot I want to show you guys, if we kind of scroll back here, is another spot where I was catching some good fish off a point. And what I was finding is that you can see there's a super steep drop right here, and this is the main river channel right here. And this is a shallow point. It's like tops out in 10, 12 feet of water. And these fish were literally sitting right there. There's a school of like 12 to 15 bass right there off the top of that point. You can see all those dots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a little bit hard to see. I don't know if you guys can pick it out fully because that screen's a little bit small, but they're right here. And I actually pulled up there and caught a bunch of fish off this spot too. These are actually some largemouth. And these fish would set up on top of this point in the first hour to hour and a half in the morning. And then after that first hour to hour and a half, they'd actually pull off this point and they would pull over into the standing timber. And so I would catch the fish in the morning off the top of the point, and I'd catch them in the middle of the day at like noon or 1 o'clock over the standing timber with a swim bait. And so it's kind of a 1-2 approach of fishing the tops of the points in 10 feet of water in the morning, and then fishing over the tops of deep trees in 25 feet of water, but the trees are actually in 50, fishing that when the sun came out in the middle of the day. And it was a really consistent way for me on Table Rock to catch, I was catching a ton of fish doing this. And so it's a pretty easy way to go catch bass if you get your graph set up properly. And one thing that I've been hearing a lot recently on my videos is, it's great that you have the money to spend on a $10,000 graph so you can see all the fish on your graph, but us common folk, us poor people, we don't have the means to buy a nice graph, and so we can't fish offshore. You can't see fish offshore. And that's very far from the truth. One, I am not like stinking rich or like super wealthy by any means. My fish finder is a really nice fish finder, saved up a long time of working to get that thing. But it is a 7-year-old graph now. My Humminbird Onyx unit is very old, but it still gives me great images. It was a great graph when it came out. But I still did really well fishing offshore in tournaments all throughout my high school and college career. And I was just using a Humminbird 998 unit. And that thing now is like 10 years old. It still gets the job done. I still use it as my front graph on my boat. It works great. And I actually started to find fish offshore with a Humminbird 798 unit, a really small one. It's like 12 years old now. It still is perfect. It's still great. I ran it as my front graph for, I think, all the way up to like 2 years ago. And so there's some really good budget graphs on the market. There's like the Humminbird or the Lowrance Hook 7. I actually did some on-the-water fishing lessons with that Lowrance Hook 7 unit, and it's like $400. You can get down imaging, you can get 2D sonar, and you can get mapping GPS for like $400. Super really good price. And we were able to find fish just like this in the tops of trees, off the points, and it looked literally just as good as my Humminbird Onyx unit. And so my Onyx was obviously 7 years old, and so in that 7 years, the Lowrance Hook unit's down imaging caught up with the down imaging from my Humminbird Onyx unit. And so you can get a really inexpensive graph, $400. I mean, obviously it's not super inexpensive, but I know you guys are spending $100 on fishing lures all the time like it's nothing, or $200 on a fishing reel like it's nothing. Or maybe it is something, but you are spending that money on those equipment. And so I would much rather spend money on a $400 Lowrance Hook 7 fish finder and be able to find fish, and then go buy an Abu Garcia Black Max $39 reel. Actually, you have like 6 of those now. I love those things. Those things are great. I use them all the time. And so I'd rather save my money on the fishing reels and buy the graphs to actually find the fish. So enough of that rant anyways. People are asking what's a good screen size for a Humminbird. I like to use at least like an 8-inch graph if you can. But best thing to say is buy the graph and the screen size that you can afford. So if you can afford the 10-inch screen, go for it. 10-inch screen is going to make it easier to see the fish. It's good clarity, stuff like that, especially if you have a little bit older eyes than I do. But if you're just going to, go buy a basic graph to start out with, Lowrance Hook 7-inch screen, really good. It's linked in the description of this video as well, so if you want to go purchase one of those, if you're new to offshore fishing and want to get a good graph, link down below. If you use those links, I actually get a small cut of the profits too, so supporting the channel there. I also have some intermediate and advanced graphs linked down there too of my recommendations of what to use. So anyways, hope that makes sense. eBay's even cheaper. Jesse says that, yeah, you can probably buy my Lowrance or my Humminbird 998 or 997 for like $300, and it's like a big, nice graph probably. So, and it works really well. It's like 10 years old. Anyways, enough of that. So let's get back to the images here. So there's some fish up here, like I mentioned, things like that. So that's this recording. So it only took me 25 minutes to get through like 2 spots. So that's pretty good. I think I'm doing great. So I'm going to turn this off for 1 second, and I'm going to pull back up another set of images. So next up, I'm pulling up the image that was the thumbnail of this video, which is the mega school of 100 bass I found on my graph. And I'm going to do a little drum roll to this. And, oh, I have to transition. Boom. Mega school. This is the megawad. This is like what you dream of finding offshore. And this is a spot that is loaded with bass. And I actually saw one of the first comments that came up from my thumbnail is, are those bass? Is that a school of bass? Or is that a school of whatever? And this is actually bass. And there's a couple ways you can tell that these are bass. Basically, for those of you who can't see the fish, it's all these dots there on the screen. And the way I explain to people how to identify the different types of fish on a graph is that bass are kind of like people in the fact that they have their kind of personal bubble, is the way I think about it. If you're sitting, in a train, a public train, you don't want someone sitting in your lap or getting right next to you and standing shoulder to shoulder, back to back with you in a train. You want to have your own little personal bubble. If you bump into someone, maybe that's okay, but you don't want people right on top of you. And bass are the exact same way. And so if you look at all these dots in through here, you can see all these dots are separated by a pretty good amount of space between the bass. There's a big opening in here. There's lots of space between these fish. And what I find is that when you have fish that aren't bass, like crappie, white bass, and striper, they'll group up in really tight packs. So tight, big balls, or they might get in a triangle. That sounded really weird, but anyways, they'll get in a triangle, and there's lots of fish packed together, and they'll basically get side by side, shoulder to shoulder. They'll stack as close to each other as they can. Where the largemouth and the smallmouth spy bass, they have their personal space. They don't like people getting in their bubble. And so, if you want to try to identify if these are bass or if they're other species, look for these fish to have a good separation. Like right here, you got a good 1/4 inch of separation, 1/2 inch of separation. You have another good, couple centimeters of separation through here. They're not right on top of each other. And hopefully that makes sense. And if you look here, they're also kind of stacked a little bit more horizontally. They're not stacked right on top of each other. So crappie and stuff, they'll stack really high and tall. There's some that are stacked tall here, but they're more stacked horizontally than they are tall. They're I guess normally if you see a school that's longer widthwise than height, that's most likely going to be bass. If they're stacked high and they're higher, the length of those fish up is greater than the length sideways, those are probably going to be another type of fish. And so this was a mega wad of spotted bass, and actually making a video which is a complete guide to video game fishing. And I was actually catching these fish using my sonar, fishing vertically on these fish. And if I pull up, just 1 second here, I'll pull up a recording of do that. I don't want to spoil it too much because I actually have a really cool video coming about that, and it's going to be 35 minutes long. It's a ton of content, but I'm going to explain exactly what this image means, how to use your front graph to catch fish with a drop shot or with a Demiki rig or a spoon video game fishing. And you can see these recordings are super great if you know what video game fishing is. And I'll explain what this all is, how this works. I'm working on that video right now. It's a 20 to 25 hour edit. And so I've been working on it for 3 days now. And so hopefully you guys will enjoy, but I'm going to break it down to the very basics of how to interpret these images, how to video game fish, where to find them, everything. And so I'm going to actually turn this off now and gonna not spoil that for everyone, but going back over to the mega school of fish over here, basically what was happening is that these fish were let's see here, give me 1 second. So someone's asking, where was this screenshot taken, what lake? This was taken on Table Rock Lake, and so Table Rock has been loaded. You can see, this is the schools of fish that the guys were finding during that Major League Fishing event, the second one they had, where Jacob Wheeler actually won the event, and he pulled up and he had 3 or 4 schools like this found. And I think I found 3 schools of fish like this year on Table Rock. I don't know, maybe 2. 2 schools of fish like this, and I found a couple on Beaver Lake. They're like this. But there's just fish all over the graph, and you can just pull up and just drop on with a drop shot. Every single drop, just do, 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 do. And in the video, you'll see, I think I caught like 15 or 20 fish off the spot, then just left because I caught enough of them. And in the video, every time I'm explaining something instruction-wise, I'm talking about it, and then, I catch a fish as I'm explaining it because there's so many fish down there. I was catching them every drop. And this is just a main lake point, and it's right next to the creek channel. And so you can pull up there and catch those fish. I'm not going to spoil all my spots on Table Rock for you guys because I do offer on-the-water fishing lessons where you can actually go out in the boat with me and go fishing on the lake. And so if you want me to go out in your boat with you and show you how to video game fish, show you how to find these schools of fish, show you how they move on these points and offshore, then definitely book a lesson with me. I'm very low on availability right now, and so I have a few spots left. And if I don't have any spots available when you actually go there, because I think I have like 2 left till like September, it's like through September. So I'm very, very limited, and I can open up a few more spots if you reach out to me at fishthemoment1@gmail.com. And so even if you want to have a trip out through September, reach out to me and let me know, because I definitely have some openings, but I don't want to open up everything at once because I'm kind of getting flooded with requests at the moment. So just reach out to me if you don't see availability where you're at. So anyways, definitely check that out. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, I mentioned this earlier on the beginning of the podcast, or beginning of the live stream, but I do have the Fish the Moment podcast coming out here very soon. It'll be out like tomorrow for everyone on the iPhone podcast app. And so I'll announce that soon. But if you have a chance, please go to the Fish Moment, look up the Fish Moment podcast when I post about it on social media. Leave it a 5-star review, give it a review on there, and also subscribe to the podcast. That'll definitely help out for sure. And actually here, I can give you guys a sneak peek for my live stream listeners who were here the whole time. This is the Fish the Moment podcast, and there's a link up on my website here if you guys want to get a little sneak peek of it. But anyways, the Fish the Moment podcast is here, and I got links to resources. I have all kinds of stuff available here. If you guys, when I post this, I'll let you guys see what all this is. But basically, the Fish the Moment podcast. It's not up on the site. I have this on like a sneaky hidden page, but this is going to be really cool, and it's an hour long, so you can listen to it as you go to the lake, things like that. I'm super excited about that because it's me with Travis Moran from FLW Live. We're talking about how to catch fish in different seasons, different conditions. This first podcast is about flooded lakes. And we also bring in FLW Tour pros, Major League Fishing pros, Elite Series pros, and interview them as well. And so it's a super cool podcast. I'm so excited about it, guys. And the other thing I want to talk about, just as everyone's here, is I do have some more map breakdowns available on my website, some new ones. Map breakdowns are just, I basically mark up 4 areas on the lake using Navionics, give you a bunch of spot recommendations with detailed descriptions of where to fish, best conditions to fish, the baits to fish. I give you condition guides here of the best conditions to fish with sonar images for each lake. I show best offshore baits that I like to fish in each area with links with all the colors, everything. And so it's a really great information. It's been like 3 hours per map. And I have a bunch of them up here: Grand Lake, Lake Fork, Toledo Bend, Lanier, Ray Hubbard, Douglas Lake, Pickwick, Falls Lake, and Murray Lake. Lake Murray, these are my new ones I put up today, Falls Lake and Lake Murray. So definitely check out those map breakdowns if you haven't. And also, if you purchase one, it really helps support the channel and helps support my business so I can keep making videos for you guys. But enough of my shameless plugs. Again, I wanted to do that really quick because I saw a bunch of people on. But let me now jump back over to my next Sonar recording really quick, and we will show you some stuff that I found on Beaver Lake. So let me pause it right here. So let me transition this back over. Boom. And I also have more lakes up, by the way, no problem, over the next couple weeks. I'll be posting like 2 or 3 map breakdowns a week. But anyways, so if you look at this next image, this is another spot I found. This is on Beaver Lake, and this is a spot where basically there's a giant rock out in the middle of the lake. It's this giant boulder, and it's on a nice little point, little drop, and there's a bunch of fish on this spot. And you can see all these dots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's a ton of dots on this spot. And one thing you'll notice about this spot that's kind of interesting in my mind is these dots are kind of small, or they're a little bit like not that obvious. They're kind of dull. And so what you look is, if you look at this spot and then we compare it to, for example, these dots right here. You see these dots where it's boom, 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 boom. Those are bright, big dots. What I find is when I'm looking at my down imaging on my sonar, whenever I'm dealing with small fish, like 8 to 12 inches, I'm going to get a lot of these dots that are very, very light, and they're very, very small on the graph. And more than just being small, it's not really the size of the dot that matters as much. It's more about how hard the return is. And the way I set up my fish finders, guys, is I always set my sensitivity from wherever the default is. I take my sensitivity down like 2 or 3%. So if it's like 75% is default, I go to 72 or 71%. If my sensitivity is at 10 out of 20 is the default, I'll go down to like 8 or 9. And so that's what I do to get these really good images. And what I find when I take that sensitivity down is the smaller fish give you these dull, almost transparent, kind of ghosty returns. And it's because there's a material that's in the fish's lateral line, which is actually what gives off that reading where you can actually see them on your graph. And the smaller fish don't have as much of that material in their body because they're just smaller. And so you get these smaller returns, or these weaker returns. They're not as bright. And then when you get bigger fish, you get these much brighter, stronger returns. And so these fish here are actually some good spy bass, like 2.5 pounders. I call it like a 2.5 pounder off this school of fish right here. And then this school over here is a group of tiny bass. I actually fished them for like 20 minutes because I kept on getting bit, and I was like, why can I not get these fish to bite? Threw a hair jig down there first, then a swim bait. I was getting bit like every cast. Then I finally threw a drop shot down there, wouldn't bite a 6-inch worm, put a 4-inch worm on there, and I finally caught one. It was like 6 inches long, and there was a ton of 6 inchers on the spot, and I was catching them in like every drop with the 4-inch drop shot worm, but they wouldn't eat it, the other baits, because they were just too small. But then I pull up on this spot where I see these dots like this. Those are the bigger bass. So someone is asking, can you show the corresponding 2D sonar? So yep, I can do that. So here is the down imaging here with the of this spot. Then if we scroll ahead real quick in here is the corresponding down 2D sonar image. And so if we kind of look at this again, you'll notice that these dots, these are the fish that are on the screen, and some of them aren't even really showing up. We saw in the other image there was like a ton of dots. You see like 30 dots on here. Then when we get to the 2D sonar, you can see there's only like 4 arches, and they're really tiny because those are the tiny fish. And so sometimes when you are using your 2D sonar, you can actually see the size of the fish a little bit better because the size of the arch will indicate how big the fish are. The size of the dots don't really indicate how big the fish are on your down imaging. It's more about how bright those dots are. But on the 2D sonar, the size of the arch does correlate with the size of the fish. And so like right here, this is a giant fish. I don't know what that is. That's something big. This is another big fish. I don't know what that is. That's probably not a bass. It could be a giant striper. And so I think that's the only actually 2D image I have. I don't really use 2D sonar too much. But one thing I will say, guys, is that when you're using 2D sonar, the fish will show up as arches. And then when you're using your down imaging, the fish will show up as dots. And another thing is when you're using the 2D sonar, the fish only show up as arches when your boat is moving at speed. So if it's moving 2-3 miles an hour, that will cause the fish to show up as arches. Kind of like I have on my shirt right here. Got my graphing shirt. And so that's what the fish look like when you're driving at speed. But then when you're not driving at speed, what you'll find is that these fish will show up as straight lines. And so that's what this image is right here, where you actually have a straight line like this. It almost looks like spaghetti or like lasagna, where it's like this squiggly line. Those are fish as well. They don't show up as arches. That's because I'm using my front graph, and I'm actually, this is off the transducer on my trolling motor, and I'm stationary. I'm not moving. So when I'm not moving, the bass show up as lines like this. When I am moving, they show up as arches. And so just something to kind of keep in mind there. I'm also explaining this in some upcoming videos. I have so many videos I need to make, guys, and they take me so long to edit. I wish I could just make videos all day, but unfortunately I don't get enough views to be able to do that and make a living off of it. But if you keep sharing out the videos and liking the videos, commenting, it'll definitely help get the channel out, and I can hopefully make more videos and maybe do fewer lessons, though I know the people who like the lessons as well. So try not to put as much content. I'm trying to put as little content behind a paywall as possible, guys. That's kind of my goal. I don't want to be putting a paywall on everything, but obviously I need to make a living so I can do this, so I can keep making videos. Otherwise, I can't make videos if I don't do the lessons. You guys know how it works. It's all business. My MBA is working out for me, though. Fortunately, I'm actually making a living at it, so that is good. And people seem to really be enjoying the lessons. I have a lot of guys who have done multiple lessons now, so I think that's a really good sign when you get like repeat customers. I've actually had multiple repeat customers on my on-the-water fishing lessons and my one-on-one video lessons, which is good. If you want a one-on-one video lesson, guys, down over here in the right corner, go to fishmoment.com. You can sign up for a lesson. We can talk like this about your home lake. I can share specific sonar images that are specific to your lake. So I'll pull up spots on like a Navionics map, for example, and I can pull it up. Like we can go through, these are the spots I would look at on your lake. Then I can say, okay, based on the spot, this is what I'd expect to see on the sonar image. We can talk about that. We can talk about baits, approach. We can get way deeper into it than I do in these live streams. Like I normally have a really good approach and framework for the lessons that will really get you prepared to go out on the water and fish. I know there are some there's some stuff what was to say, there's a lot of people who've already had lessons with me that can probably vouch for me in the comments here. But anyways, let's see here. So next spot we got here is a brush pile. And so this is actually a series of brush piles, and there's a bunch of fish on this spot. And so the fish right here are actually showing up a little bit more like lines, because I'm actually driving pretty slow over this spot. I was just like eating a sandwich or something. And so normally when you drive faster, you actually get a better image, and so you actually get a better like dots and stuff like that. But as you drive really slow or start to slow down, these fish start to show up more almost as lines, even on your 2D sonar, or on the down imaging, I mean. So just to call out there. But this is a brush pile that's in like 30 feet of water, and you can see there's a bunch of bait fish up here on top of the brush, and so there's bait all over here. And then if you look at these brush piles right here, basically what you have are a bunch of dots, and these are all spotted bass. And these are pretty strong returns. These were good spotted bass off this spot. And pulled up, dropped a drop shot down there, caught like 8 fish off this spot. And you can also fish, again, a swim bait, a hair jig, stuff like that. And so what I'm really looking for when you're checking out these offshore areas is you want to be looking for places where you have bait, cover, and bass. If you have all three in your image, the chances of you catching fish are very, very high. And these are high percentage areas. And the more dots you have, obviously, the better the spot. But even if you just see bait fish and cover, that still is a spot that I'm going to mark, because what happens a lot of times is like on this spot right here. Give me 1 second, I'll pull up. I'm going to kill this real quick. I'm going to pull up Beaver Lake real quick, because this is where I got this recording. Give me 1 second. Okay. Come back over here. Okay, back up. So if you look at this spot right here, this is like a 31-foot point. And then it comes up here and it's like 16, 20 feet out here. This is actually where some of this brush I marked came from. And so if you look at this point out here, it's kind of bordered by this really big creek channel. This isn't this exact spot. I actually shared this in on-the-water fishing lesson with a guy, and he has a tournament this weekend, so I'm not going to give away the exact spots on this one, guys, but this spot looks very similar. I'm going to be transparent. This is not the exact spot, but again, someone helped someone out in a lesson, and he's fishing a tournament, so I don't want to give away all of my juice. And I also live like 10 minutes from Beaver Lake, so I'm fine giving up my spots, things like that, but I do help some guys out here, so don't want to have it become a zoo on all of these offshore areas for the guys I'm helping out. But anyways, so if you look at the spot right here, there's a point here, and this is from Beaver Lake. And if you look at the spot, a lot of times what will happen is you'll see bait fish here, you'll see brush, but you won't see any bass. And what happens is that the brush pile's like right here. And sometimes if you graph over this area, you may see nothing. No brush, no bait, no fish. Move on. Don't worry about it. Then sometimes you might just see brush down there. And if you don't see any brush, a lot of times I just ignore it. If it's just the brush piles, no bait, no fish, I also ignore that. I'll mark it, I'll save it for later because maybe that's a good brush pile in like December or January, but it's not good in the summertime. And then if I see a bunch of bait on the spot and brush but no fish, what that means is that maybe these bait fish have just pushed up out of this channel on top of this point and are sitting there and they're feeding up, they're doing their thing, and the bass haven't found them yet. They haven't located those shad yet. And so just because you see an image where there's like a rock and shad and there's no fish, doesn't mean those bass won't be there. It's just at that exact moment those bass aren't pulled up. And a lot of times also you'll see where there's no bait fish, but there's just bass in brush. And so a lot of times if you see just the bass in the brush, a lot of times it's hard to get some of those fish to bite if there's not shad in the image as well. And this could also be blueback herring if you're in South Carolina. A lot of times they have those cane piles and you'll see fish dotted up all over these brush piles, but you won't see any bait, and it's really hard to get those fish to bite. But then once those shads start swimming over the top of those brush piles, those bass rise up out of the brush tops like these did. They rised up out of the brush top and started chasing these shad, and it got them really active, and you're able to catch them. And so ideally you want to look for places where you have the brush plus the bait, and then you have all of the let's see here, and then you have all of the fish right here. Give me 1 second here, guys. 1 second. Okay. Anyways, so let's see here. I got rid of Denver. Don't worry, guys. That's what I was doing. I was getting a little bit distracted by that. But Halo says, don't tell them everything on Lake Murray. It's all under there. But anyways, so blueback herring is a really good deal. Sorry about that again in the comments, guys. I need to add a moderator. Where's JT? I need to add JT as a moderator to my live streams, and you can kick those people out. But anyways, the spots here, these blueback herring and the shad and stuff will come up over the top of these areas. And again, these shad will get these bass active in these brush piles. And so if you're not seeing those bass in the brush piles, or if you're seeing those bass in the brush piles but you can't get them to bite, come back later when there's actually shad over the top of those brush piles, and those bass will rise up out of the brush. They'll then start feeding on the shad. You can catch them on top waters, on jerk baits, fished over the top of them. You can fish a swim bait through them, fish a drop shot down there. And so, again, if you graph a place with brush only, just mark it for later. If you graph a spot with brush and bass and don't catch them, wait till you come back and find shad in the same area. Then you get those fish to bite. So, anyways, let's see here. Let's see if there's anything else. Got a couple more spots here, just a bunch of fish that were pulled up on a point. This is kind of like early morning, so there was just some fish that were roaming on balls of shad. There's a ball of shad here, a ball of shad here. You can see those fish are just kind of chasing these individual balls of shad out here. And you can actually get these fish to bite, but it's sometimes a little bit tricky if they're chasing a specific group of shad, because you'll mark these fish, you'll graph over and mark them, you'll pull around, you'll try to fish for them, and those fish could have already moved like way over here in that 30 seconds that you marked them, put the trolling motor down, and started fishing for them. And so a lot of times, if you pull up on a spot like this and you see fish down there and you see bait, but you don't get them to bite, a lot of times it means you just didn't get to them quick enough, which is fine, and it just kind of happens. But one thing I found is that these fish don't bite traditional baits very well, like just a swim bait or a drop shot, but they will bite a hair jig really, really well. And so even on the deep clear lakes, if you fish a hair jig, and the hair jig I like to throw, give me 1 second here, guys. I'll pull this up. The hair jig I'm throwing is... Where'd that go? Oh, there we go. The hair jig I'm going to throw is this prayer jig. Cumberland prayer jig. They actually have some at Academy. They're like in the striper section. If you have an Academy Sports by you, they're like $2.99, and they're half-ounce white bucktail jigs. But it's a jig like this, and you don't need to put a trailer on it. Just fish it as is. I just fish it in the white and half-ounce. I literally fire that thing out there, and what I'm doing is I'm casting that hair jig into those fish. And the reason this hair jig is so good is the way I fish it is I'm literally casting that thing out, letting it sink down to the bottom, and I'm reeling that thing 5 or 6 times really fast. And it'll pop that jig up into the air. And I put my rod at like a 11 o'clock position. And then as that bait hits, as I reel it 5 or 6 times, I'll stop it and I'll put my rod back to like 10 o'clock. And then it'll give some slack to the bait and it'll fall back down. And I reel it 5 or 6 or 7 times really fast. It'll pop it back up. I'm showing, 1 second guys, I'm not showing the thing I need to be showing. Anyways, I'm ripping that hair jig up off the bottom, reeling it 5 times, it's dropping on the slack line, I'm popping that hair jig back up, letting it fall down on slack line, popping the hair jig back up, letting it fall on slack line, and that's how I'm getting those fish to bite. And so basically I'm just throwing that hair jig out, and the reason they bite it so much better than like a traditional like swim bait, just swim through there really slow, is that they're reacting to that bait popping off the bottom. And I'm ruining it now because I talk about a hair jig. Literally no one in Arkansas, I feel like, fishes that thing consistently. I know that a lot of people know about them, but I feel like not that many people fish them, especially in the deep clear lakes. And so if you're fishing like a Lake Murray, where they have the blueback herring, any deep clear lake, and they also work on dirty water lakes. I know they were popular on the Tennessee River. That's where they became popular. But fishing that hair jig on these deep clear lakes in like 20, 30, 40 feet of water is super deadly. And it's one of the few ways I can find to catch these fish that are just kind of roaming and cruising. They'll come and they'll chase that hair jig when you reel it really fast and it falls back down. They'll chase that when they won't chase any other bait. So 389 people on the stream. What happened? Now I go like on the viral live stream page. What's going on? I'm at 389 people ever on my stream. I don't know if everyone's just like coming in and having a party. I don't know. Maybe that thumbnail got everyone here, but hopefully you guys are enjoying. 395 people. Holy cow. Halo says I invite everyone. I'm glad you have a 300-person family. Halo, really appreciate that. But that is crazy. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate everyone joining, tuning in. So now what I want to do is I actually want to go through some comments and just see if you guys had questions. I feel like there weren't that many questions. People were just kind of listening intently, which is nice. Other than that one guy, we got him out of here. But we need to add a moderator onto the stream. If you guys want to be moderators, send me a message on the live stream if you're here every week. Also, thank you so much, Kid Iraq, for the $5 super chat. Come to South Carolina. I'm actually going to be, I haven't announced this yet, guys. I'm going to announce this at the very end of the stream because I don't want a ton of people to just go right away there. But I opened up 4 on-the-water fishing lessons. And let me go over here. I'll pull this up. I've opened up 4 on-the-water fishing lessons for you guys on my website, fishthemoment.com. If you go to fishing lessons, just so you guys know, it's really sneaky, Raleigh, North Carolina. I'll be in Raleigh, North Carolina from Tuesday, September 10th through September 14th. And I have on-the-water one-on-one lessons. I'll be there during that time. I'm also going to be doing something called Bass Camp. And I'm trying to figure out how to set it all up and all that stuff, but the weekend before that, so on I think it's like September 8th and 9th or 7th and 8th, I'm going to be doing a bass camp where I'm going to be doing a 2-day fishing camp where it's a full day seminar, on the water instruction. You'll be able to, there's going to be 6 boats only, 2 people per boat, so 12 guys. It's a very exclusive fishing trip, but it'll be a bass camp where you guys will be able to go and actually spend 2 full days with me. I'll be jumping into everyone's boats. We'll be able to share information about how to catch fish offshore. There's going to be in classroom time, all kinds of awesome stuff. And so I'm going to have that available on my website very soon here too. Need to work it out this week. But if you guys want to sign up for a North Carolina fishing lesson, I'm going to be there for literally, I have 4 spots available. That's all I have. So if you guys want to go check those out, that's where they're at. I'm also going to be traveling to other parts of the country throughout the rest of the year. I'm going to go to Texas later this year, down to Sam Rayburn. And then I'm going to be going to other parts of the country throughout the rest of next year. I'm going to travel at least 4 or 5 times a year for lessons. So just wanted to call that out. 420 people. What is happening to the stream? This is crazy. Anyways, so let me pull this up over here again. And so got these images. So those are all my Sonar recordings that I had to share. A couple things if you wanted to kind of see some of the rock stuff I was looking at. This is, there weren't a ton of questions, so I'm just going to kind of go off, just say that you guys didn't have too much and I was covering it well. But anyways, a couple more super chats from Michael Seacrest for $4.99. Thanks, Michael. Thank you. Come to South Carolina, $3.89. Congrats, man. Thank you. I'm already up to hit 420, which is crazy. And then cough, get a rack for the come to South Carolina. I don't know if I'll be able to. I might be able to sneak down through South Carolina on the way home. You guys might have to twist my leg, but something like that. And then Butch Payton with the $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Butch. Thank you for signing up for the lesson as well earlier. Really appreciate that. So, anyways, I guess I really need to come to South Carolina. I did do Lake Murray, the Lamette breakdown. If you guys want to check that out, you can definitely do that. But maybe I'll head down there in January instead. Instead of trying, I probably won't be able to make it when I go to North Carolina. But I can come back to South Carolina in the winter. It'll be nice and warmer or warm-ish there. So I'll make that happen. So got the Sonar recordings. A couple more things kind of wanted to show since we have a few more extra minutes. One is actually found some cool house foundations on Beaver Lake, which is really cool. And always make sure when you're running your fish finders, guys, that you have your graph set up so that the left half of your graph is your side imaging always. I like to have the side imaging showing if your graph is big enough. If you have like a Humminbird like 7 or like a 7-inch Helix, sometimes you have to just run like the mapping and the down imaging, and it's hard to run side imaging also. But if you can run all three on the graph and fit it, always have your side imaging as half of your screen, have a quarter of your screen with mapping and another quarter of your screen with your down imaging. And just always kind of be paying attention to the side imaging, because sometimes you can pick out like these really subtle things like this house foundation right here. And this house foundation actually had a bunch of fish on it, which is crazy. And right here you just see it's a little house foundation, and I don't know if I got a better image of it. I didn't. But got this house foundation right here, and it's just this little like box. You can see those shadows getting cast by it. Pretty cool stuff. I actually didn't record the part where I actually saw the fish over it, but there are a bunch of fish on this, so you have to take my word for it. But and you can also see like here's an image of like a big rock that's offshore, a big boulder. And one thing you'll notice is that if you go back in this image, you'll see that there's a couple more like brush piles right here that I marked in my graph. And you can see that these are pretty tall brush piles because this shadow being cast by it is pretty long. This black part is the shadow, and it's being cast off to the side. This means this brush pile is probably 3, 4, 5 feet tall. And then right here is a rock pile. And this rock pile here isn't very tall because it's not casting any real long shadow. So these rocks are maybe only 6 inches to a foot off the bottom, where this brush pile here is really high off the bottom, and that's what was holding a lot of the fish, is the higher cover off the bottom. So anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed the stream. I think I'm going to call it quits here. 425 people. This is insane. I'm going to need to stick on Clint Hart with a $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Clint. Really appreciate it. I need to stay on and just keep talking. 400, it keeps going up. You guys just want me to keep talking. But coming back, let me know, guys, in the comments if you want me to keep doing just like video or like things like this where I just give a seminar rather than just doing like breaking down random people's lakes. If you like this format where I just talk more and do like just a seminar in itself, I can do that for sure. This is what I do in my one-on-one video lessons as well. So if you want to book a video lesson, I can give you a personal seminar on your lake. And so something just to think about there. But if you like this format, I'll keep doing it because obviously people are showing up and they like it. And it's something that it's really fun for me to do. I love to share as much information as I can, share what I'm learning, what I'm doing on the lake. And so I'm going to be fishing a lot every single week, and I graph offshore. So I can do like a weekly like thing, show me my sonar images and doing that if you guys like that as the best format for these live streams. And I can show you the areas, talk about the baits. Maybe I can just say like, here's a review of how I caught my fish this last week, if you guys like that. And I can say, here's all the spots I caught them, here's the sonar recordings, here's the navionic spots. Let me know if that's something that you would enjoy in a video, and I maybe even show some fish catches of myself, pull those and get those ready. So let me know what you guys want. And then we got to see Herb saying, how would I contribute money? One really good way, guys, if you do want to support the channel, is even the super chats are awesome, but you can also go to my Patreon page, which is just right here in the right. You go to www.patreon.com/fishthemoment. I'm one Patreon member away from doing a 100 Patreon member seminar where I'm going to do a full day seminar for free for all Patreon members. And for those of you who can't make it to the actual physical event, I'll be live streaming it through Patreon as well. So all my Patreon members will be able to watch that live stream of my event. And so it'll be a free event for all Patreon members. So definitely sign up for my Patreon page if you would like. And then people, when you want to get to Southern Missouri, Clint, I live like an hour from Southern Missouri, so if you ever want to get out, just send me a message at an email at fishthemoment1@gmail.com or on YouTube or whatever, Clint, and we can try to get out, because I can do like Stockton, Table Rock, all kinds of places. So one guy's asking, so after you find some structure, how do you set up to fish at boat position? I have a ton of videos on my channel, guys. Let me pull up my YouTube channel really quick. I can just show you some of the best videos that I have for that. Let me see here. Let me put this away. Give me 1 second as I pull up my YouTube channel. 1 second. Because I do have a lot of really good content out there. If you guys are new to the channel, if you haven't watched a lot of my videos, I have so much going on for all the new offshore fishermen. And so let me transition over here. So one of the best ways to find, if you want to like get into offshore fishing, you want to learn how to offshore fish. The best way to do this is go to Fish the Moment on YouTube. And you can also just click, if you're on YouTube right now, just click on my channel down below. And then you can go to the homepage and you can go see some like my top, most popular videos. Most of these are like my really, really good in-depth guides on offshore fishing. But if you also want to find some good videos, just go to the, whoops, don't do that. I don't want to change my channel art. Go to the playlist, and you can go to my second playlist, Offshore Bass Fishing Master Playlist. This playlist is awesome. And so if we go and we click on this, you can see some of the videos. We don't want to watch the video of the girl though. So what is this? Get this out of here. Oh, we have to watch the ad. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that, guys. So if you go here, some of the things in the playlist. So for example, here's a video to answer your question from earlier. How to hit offshore structure first cast every time. In this video, I talk about how I graph offshore structure, how you can spin around, make your first cast and hit every single time using waypoints or a marker buoy. And it's a 16-minute video. It talks about how a sonar transducer works, all the in-depth stuff you need to know so you can actually hit it every single time. And then you can go to my complete guide to topographical maps if you want to learn how to read a topo map. My complete guide to fish finding or bass fishing electronics, offshore ledge fishing, 6 secrets to offshore fishing the pros don't want you to know, Google Earth stuff, when to fish offshore, how deep to fish offshore, spots in every season, all kinds of stuff, how to think like an offshore bass fisherman. There's all kinds of videos in this playlist. This is like the gold mine. If you want to learn to be an offshore bass fisherman, watch this playlist and you're going to be an expert by the time you get done with this playlist. It is really, really good, and I'm adding more videos to it every single week. I'm trying to make these really good comprehensive guides. I'm working on a sonar fishing video where you do the video game fishing. It's like a 35-minute like master class, and it's taking me like 25 hours, and it's probably going to take me like 30 hours by the time I'm done with this stupid video, but it's going to be really, 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 really good. So anyways, it says hit the like button. Yes, please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Please share the videos out. It helps me a ton to continue to make this content for you guys. And I have so many videos I want to make and I need to make for you guys. And so they're coming. They just take a lot of effort to make them really good. And so just bear with me there. But again, Fish Moment Podcast coming out soon. Check on the iTunes app tomorrow. It should be there, or maybe Thursday. Also announced on Facebook and social media. Book a fishing lesson if you want for more stuff like this, and buy some map breakdowns if you like. So other than that, I need to get going actually. My girlfriend's coming in from out of town, and I'm going to see her for the first time in a week or so, hang out with her and her family for a little bit. So gonna jump and do that, and then I'm gonna be on the lake first thing tomorrow morning. So really excited to get back with Table Rock, and I'm gonna be doing a video series where I'm gonna fish 3 days in a row, and I'm basically going to show you how I find fish offshore in preparation for like a pseudo tournament. I'm actually not going to fish a tournament because it's a little bit hard to film and fish tournaments well. And so I'm going to practice for 2 days, and then I'm going to treat my third day on Saturday like an actual tournament. And so I'm going to be doing that, and so hopefully you guys will enjoy that as well. So anyways, guys, thanks again for checking out the live stream tonight. So many people tuned in, which is crazy. And if you did miss something, again, this video will be posted live to YouTube right after the stream is done, and you can watch all the Sonar recording explanations again and watch it again and again if you want. Watch it like 6 or 7 times. It helps me out. from YouTube perspective. So anyways, thanks again for everyone for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And I'll see y'all next week, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time for another Fish Moment live stream. I'm here every single Tuesday at 8 p.m. talking about fishing. And again, thank you so much for all the support. See y'all in the next stream.